Welcome to Speaking of Love, the podcast, and I am your host, Latoya. I created this podcast in honor of my dad, who was an amazing guy. He had an infectious laugh, and his spirit. Welcome to Speaking of Love, the podcast, and I am your host, Latoya. I created this podcast in honor of my dad, who was an amazing guy. He had an infectious laugh, and his spirit was magnetic. He was the type of guy who made everybody feel like somebody special. If you were to place him in a crowded room of 100 people, my dad would be the smartest person in the entire room. He was an award-winning radio TV broadcast engineer for many years. Born and raised in the city of Detroit, he was one of the first to go to college in his family. And while attending Wayne State University, he developed a lifelong love affair with the game of basketball. He was the shortest point guard on the team, but he could slam dunk the basketball with either hand. By all outward appearances, my dad lived a rewarding life, but there were parts of him that were known to only him. On March 2nd of 2020, my dad's private struggles became public when he took his own life in a murder-suicide. When he died, a part of me died too. And since the tragedy, I have become an advocate for mental health awareness and suicide prevention. I also created this beautiful podcast in honor of my dad and others like him who are struggling with the effects of mental health challenges. My podcast, Speaking of Love, is named after a show my dad once hosted called Speaking of Sports. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me today as we take a journey in pursuit of the strongest magnetic force on the planet Earth, and that's love. My name is Latoya Bond, and I have a podcast called Speaking of Love. My podcast is dedicated to the memory of my dad who took his own life in a murder-suicide. Aside from that, I am a business owner. I have a home-based business. I am also a legal professional during my 9-to-5 day. And I am a person who operates her entire life on the premise of spreading love. It's the secret to my success. It's the secret to my longevity on this earth, and it's what keeps us going because love is the thing that makes all things beautiful. So that's why I'm here today to talk about my favorite subject in the whole wide world, and that's love. Hello, and welcome everyone to Speaking of Love, the podcast. I am so happy to be here today. Thank you all for tuning in. I have a beautiful young lady here today. Her name is Manisha Leary, and I met Manisha at the Kevin Song Conference back in January. It was a 3-day event, and she and I were at the tables right next to each other, and I just felt so passionate about learning all that she is involved in. She is such a wonderful person. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of Manisha. She's a licensed master social work, a psychotherapist in the state of Michigan, earning her degree from the University of Michigan. She has over 13 years of experience. She has dedicated her life to helping others process their traumas while learning to live a fulfilling life. She currently works for Wayne State University as a program manager of Frontline Strong Together, better known as FST5. It's a mental and behavioral wellness program for first responders and their families. Welcome, Manisha. Welcome.
Hello, Latoya. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you, Manisha. As I told everyone earlier, you and I met at the Kevin Song's annual conference on suicide prevention and awareness. And your table was right next to mine. We had a fabulous time, and it was just a time for mental health professionals like yourself to come together to bring awareness to conversations that really need to be had in our society today.
Absolutely. Yeah, the well, once it was amazing to meet you, because I tell everybody, as I was mentioning about being on the podcast today, that I had purchased your book before I even knew that you were the author. So how we met was where I was like skimming through the book, and then I look up and I was like, wait, you're the author of this book I just purchased. So which is an amazing book, by the way. And so, yeah, being at these conferences and working with organizations like Heaven Songs helps us talk about things that people really don't like talking about. People don't really like to talk about mental health and the stigma that surrounds it. But more importantly, people don't like to talk about suicide and suicidal ideations and kind of having these thoughts where it can be difficult for family members who have lost people to suicide. Also, it can be difficult for families and individuals that are going through and having those thoughts at the time. But I think in the world, in the space that we're in, it just provides a more welcoming space of just talking about it and being okay with talking about it. We're losing so many people to suicide. We're losing so many people to not knowing how to talk about mental health and their concerns, that there's just no space of not talking about it anymore. So
Yes, and thank you for champions like you to bring awareness to such a relevant topic. But before we go into our topic of discussion, I do want to find out a little more about you, Manisha, and how you
hi.
started. So tell me about your early years growing up as a little girl. What was life like for Manisha?
Oh man. Okay, so I have to say, life for little Manisha was interesting. It was full of love. I have a very great and supportive family. I've always been the type of little girl who was curious. So I always wanted to know the things and to do the things. But we didn't always have a lot. So my family struggled at times, and we had experiences where we had to, struggle through kind of needing to lean on your family for additional support, and being a daughter pretty much of a single parent home. My mom was my everything. She worked her butt off to take care of me and my siblings, and her work ethic is where I get my work ethic from today. She's my biggest
Wow.
fan, and so so I learned a lot from her. So I think I will say this though. As a kid, I really thought I was going to do something fun, like be an astronaut or like be a dancer on the Oscars or something. I thought my life was headed towards like doing that work. But quickly, I would say into probably middle school years, high school years, I realized that my mission and my passion was for helping others, and that was what I was going to lead my life into doing. So once I figured that out and found out that that's what I wanted to do, I did the school path. I did my undergraduate.
Your educational journey. You attended University of Michigan,
Yes.
and
So I attended the University of Michigan for my graduate degree. I got my graduate degree, my MSW from University of Michigan. And I was born and raised in Ann Arbor, so that's always been a dream to finish, to have the University of Michigan on my CV. But I started off, I did kind of a non-traditional school path. I did 2 years at a community college. So I started off at Washington Community College, and then did 2 years at Eastern Michigan University. So I'm also an Eagle, I'm a proud Eagle. And then did my graduate studies at the University of Michigan, and I am a lifelong Wolverine ever since I was a little
oh, I am the parent of the Wolverine. My daughter graduated from U of M in December of 2022. So that's
girl.
beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah.
welcome to her to this amazing community. I know people have lots of things to say about Wolverines, but this amazing community to be a part of. And the School of Social Work at the University of Michigan does amazing things. And so I'm so happy to be a part of that network as well.
Well, that's beautiful, Manisha. So, talk to me about your work, the inspiration behind being a licensed master social worker and a psychotherapist. Talk to me about that. What is that like for you?
So it's kind of a journey that when you get in, the beauty about social work is that it kind of can lead you down a path of doing multiple things. And I think um, a lot of us kind of get a bad rap. So I appreciate that we're having this conversation during March because it's the National Social Workers Month. So I am so proud to be here and talking about social workers and the work that we do. But we kind of get a bad rap. Most people know us as kind of the person who comes in and takes the kids away from the family, or the people who work in kind of like the welfare offices, or CPS and things like that. And social work is so much more than that. Social work is so much more expanded than that. We are often the individuals who work above and beyond our job descriptions. We work long hours. We put ourselves into the situations to not only help individuals, but to really try to foster a space where people can learn and create a better life for themselves as well. And so
Mm,
when I got into the field, I honestly really wanted to work into my community. I did a lot of work where I worked with teens. I was the director of a placement for pregnant and parenting teen moms early on, and worked with low-income housing at one point in my career as well. But I realized that trauma was kind of the path that I was going to go down. I found myself, once I decided to get into therapy and in practicing to be a psychotherapist, I found myself leaning into working with the people that were hardest to work with. Often we would
mm,
find counselors or people who would say, "Oh, I just don't take complicated or severe patients. I do the mild to moderate type things, or I only do kind of surface type level things." And the reality is that trauma pretty much affects most of us, and
mm-hmm,
and a lot of it happens during childhood. And what we learn as a child is how to protect ourselves. And often trauma halts our development and growth to the age in which the trauma happened. So although chronologically you'll grow up and you'll be a 30 or 40-year-old adult, mentally you may not be there yet. And so when I got into the work of being a trauma trained psychotherapist, it was important for me that people understood where their trauma came from, that they knew that they were not their trauma, and then they learned the skills to be able to help themselves live a fulfilling life in spite of what they've been through. And so
uh,
that has led me
that's
into an amazing career of
mm,
13 years in of doing the work with trauma, and now focusing on after 2020 was a interesting year for all of us, realizing that as a country and as a society, it really kind of stressed us more, where we were forced to stay home, affected mentally and physically around either isolation, depression, lack of being with individuals, and
mhm.
then of course the work that we saw our first responders doing in the media and on social media and things like that. I decided to take my skills and the work that I've learned being a trauma therapist and take that into the work of working with first responders. So that's
And
how
what
I'm
has that
working.
been like for you working with the first responders? Because people don't realize how traumatic it is for the first responders to be a part of something like that. Can you
Absolutely.
talk about
Absolutely.
your experience working with the first responders?
Yes, yes. Actually, it makes me so happy to talk about. And I do know I had, just to put out there, I do know that it sounds interesting to not only have a social worker, but to have a Black female work so closely with first responders after kind of the impression that the world has about the Black community and the relationship that we have with first responders. And so within Frontline Strong, we work with police, fire, EMS, 911 dispatch, and corrections. And our goal is to understand that's one, we're all humans. Like at the core baseline of where we are, we're all humans. And so keeping that in the forefront of our mind, our first responders get the image of being these almost superhuman, superhero people. And so we have higher expectations for them when we see them policing or, going to a house to put out a fire or saving someone on the side of the road as an EMS person. Like all of these things, we have these higher expectations about. And we don't realize that they also struggle with the exact same things that we do on top of having the stressors and the pressure of their job. So Frontline Strong is a program that allows us to find a connection with our first responders. One, to help them realize that they too are able to have the same concerns and have the same struggles that we are and still be amazing at the work that they do. But our goal within this program is to help them understand that without managing your mental health and your physical health as a full 360 view, you're not going to be the best version of yourself to do the work that you do. So that's how we get in situations where we find ourselves extremely fatigued on the job, lashing out, people being able to record things that isn't really the idea, who this person is, and being in a space of who these individuals are. And so my mission and my goal and my purpose within working with first responders is helping us in the state of Michigan to take care of the people who take care of us and provide them with the resources that they need to do the best job that they can. And just like I mentioned earlier, our first responders, the reality of in this first responder world is that we're losing them at higher rates to suicide than we are to line of duty deaths or just natural causes, any of those things. And so it's a reflection of what's happening in the country. It's a reflection of what the country is going through right now. Is that the more that we don't talk about how we're feeling, the worse outcomes we're having in terms of taking care of the people that we love.
So Manisha, with your work, can you give me an example of like a breakthrough that you were able to achieve with one of your clients working in this space?
Absolutely. So Frontline Strong, it provides access to resources for families, for first responders and their families. So I think the biggest breakthrough that we found within this program, one, we were able to create and start a 24/7, 365 crisis and resource line for the first responders. So although we do have the 988 suicide prevention line, we do have a line that is similar to that, just for first responders, which is 1-833-34 strong. And so that's just for first responders in the state of Michigan. But the beauty and the breakthrough that has come through with that is, one, it has changed me as a clinician, because you go into this work and you think you've been doing stuff for so long, right? Like, oh, I know, I've worked with trauma and done all these things before. I've been really humbled with doing the work with first responders, because it is truly a different culture working with first responders. And I think one of the most identifying breakthroughs that I've had is I've actually had spouses and children of first responders come to us and say, my father needs help, and I'm afraid we're going to lose my father if we don't find a space. And we had no place else to turn. We saw, that you as a resource, or we got your number from someone, and us being able to have that first responder hear their family out and actually get that help. So again, we may not help everybody, but the sheer fact that we're changing anyone's life is a blessing to me. And it's an impact on the love that people have for each other.
Manisha, as I sit here and I talk to you and I listen to you, I can see the passion in your eyes and I can feel it in your energy. What do you love most about the work that you do for humanity?
That's such an amazing question. So I love the most about the work that I do, and what it does for humanity, is that it keeps us simple. And I know that may sound a little different, but it keeps us simple in the space of my work allows me to continuously give people grace. always.
Mm-hmm.
So I often don't see people at their best. I often don't see people when they have their mask on or when they're trying to impress other people. So I get to see this very genuine, sometimes very raw version of people. And so it allows me to continuously, in situations that may make people really frustrated or have high emotions, it allows me to continue to give you grace. And that's the number one lesson that my work has taught me, is that everyone deserves that, no matter who they are, no matter how much you disagree with that person, no matter how hard it is to be around an individual because of, their personality or characteristics. Everybody deserves grace. And so I love that I'm able to do that. That I'm able to give that.
That's beautiful. And you're right, we all need that grace.
Yes.
Manisha,
Yeah.
as I sit here talking to you, I look at you, you're very poised, you are an elegant woman, educated, beautiful, magnificent. Who inspired you to be the woman that you are today? I know we talked a little earlier about your mom and her strong work ethic, but who inspired you to be the Manisha Leary that you are today?
Oh, wow. So definitely I come back and say, first and foremost, my mother. She's always my biggest champion. Always lets me know that I can do any and everything that I do. But I would have to say that it is a combination of the women who were in my family. The Leary women are amazing. So shout out to them. I have to make sure that all of the women in my family know they're amazing. But not only that, I've come across some very amazing women in my career, very amazing individuals. And so I have to say that I am a combination of all the women who have come before me, all of my family who has fought for me to be in this position. Um, and I am a reflection of my grandmother's wildest dreams. And so she and my mother and all of the amazing women that I have been blessed to not only live out their hopes and dreams for me, but also hold this weight on my shoulders in a space that allows me to make my family proud. So they are bits and pieces of all of them are who I am and why I'm here today. So
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Manisha, every 11 minutes in the United States, someone dies by suicide. Last year alone, we lost over 48,000 people to suicide. If you're standing in a room with 20 people, at least two of those individuals, statistically, are thinking of suicide. If someone is listening to this podcast right now or watching it and they're feeling suicidal, they don't want to be here anymore, they're ready to put an end to their life, what words of encouragement would you offer them?
oh wow, that's such a loaded and very simple question. But I think my words would be um, very little. And that may sound a little strange, but in the moment that I would have someone who actually reached out and talked about being in a space where they did not want to be here anymore, my hope would be that they would feel in my presence that they are not alone. I would offer an ear to listen, because often people want to talk and tell someone that they're worth it and they fit all these things and that they're loved and that they deserve to be here, which are all very true statements. But when someone isn't feeling that way, often they just
Mm-hmm.
want to be heard. So in those moments, I'm giving my physical presence. I am allowing someone to be their most authentic version of themselves. And I'm doing the actual, instead of saying that you are not alone, I'm going to make sure that they don't feel that by having my actual physical presence or an undivided ear in that space. And I'm going to hope that we can get them to a point of where we can work through the feelings or work past the feelings, enough to just try,
I'm going to put up the number for the 988 crisis line. If anyone watching is feeling suicidal, they don't want to be here anymore, please, just like you would dial 911 in an emergency, you can now dial 988, the suicide lifeline number. There are trained professionals there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're here to help you. So please dial 988 if you need a little help. There's nothing wrong with talking to someone, with reaching out. And if you don't want to call, you can text the word help to 741-741. And those people are there, they're here to help you, because whether you feel this right now or not, please know that you have a divine purpose for being here on this earth, and your existence matters. So please stay awake a little bit longer.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in calling that number and trying that out, those individuals are amazing. So you are going to talk to someone who will allow you to talk about what you're going through. So please don't hesitate to text that number or call 988 and reach out.
Yes, yes, Manisha. I've been considering working for the hotline, just maybe a few hours a week, just to be able to help people. I think it's very, very important to do so, because for the fact that the individual has picked up the phone for the help, it
Exactly.
shows. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So, Manisha, we'll go on to my next question. This podcast is called Speaking of Love. It's created in honor of my dad, who took his own life in a murder suicide. My father was a beautiful person. He had a big personality. He loved radio, TV broadcasting. He once hosted a sports radio show called Speaking of Sports. So when he died, I wanted to do something to honor him, but I don't know anything about sports. So his radio show, Speaking of Sports, I created this podcast, Speaking of Love, because I know all about love. So the $1,000,000 question that I ask all of my guests who sit before me is, how do you define love, Manisha?
I love that. I love that. And I also absolutely love the idea of you honoring your dad in this way, of having your podcast named after his broadcast show. That's amazing. So how do I define love? Man, love for me it's a connection. It is something that's a little bit more than a feeling. It's the unspoken words that you have between individuals. It is the space in which you can go a few weeks without talking to your best friend and then talk to them on the phone, and no time has changed or no time has passed at all. It is Love is going home, laying in your mother's lap, and her rubbing your head and letting you know everything is going to be okay. Love is connection, and I think love is something that we all strive to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's the single thing that makes the world go round. It's literally what I hope puts me out of business, is people feeling love and feeling connected. So that is love for me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. So, Manisha, before we end the podcast, is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience about you and your work?
Yeah, so I just want people to know that in the time that I've spent on this earth in this career, that I've always been able to find someone who is willing to help. And so I want the audience today to know that there are individuals that you can reach out to. There's people that you can talk to, even if you're struggling and feeling any kind of doubts or kind of resistance to things. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Mental health and behavioral health and just kind of feeling overwhelmed or stressed, all of that happens to all of us. And so that isn't something to be sad about or to be fearful of or feel that you're alone with. So really, I just want people to know that there's people like myself, there's people that do this work that are here to not only to help you and to be around for you. And to my first responder world, I thank you for what you do. I thank you for all the time that you spend away from your families, and the energy that you put into showing up and being the best that you can be every single day, that you show up for not only your coworkers and your departments and the people that you love, but attempting to show up for the community as well. And I know we all don't always say thank you, but I see you and I thank you for all that you do. And I am so happy that my life is in a space of being able to serve the community and the people of the state of Michigan. So.
And we thank you as well, Manisha. You are a beautiful person. Your work ethic is strong. Your life is dedicated to serving others. And those are the types of people that I like to interview on my podcast. This podcast is a very sacred platform to me. So when I invite a person on, I've done my research, and I love interviewing people who have taken the best of them and putting it out into the world to make the world a better place. And that's what you've done, Manisha, and I really appreciate you for that.
Oh, Latoya, thank you so much for having me. You are an amazing person with a beautiful spirit. I absolutely know your father is proud of you and is loving the work that you're doing in his name. So I am so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Manisha, when the pages of your life are reviewed and your mission here on the planet Earth is complete, what do you most want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for my spirit, my character, my integrity, but most importantly, I want people to always feel love when they're around me. So I hope to be remembered for the love that I spread.
Well, you have already achieved your intention, because I feel the love exuding from you. When I met you at the conference, it was just something about you that let me know that you were definitely here with a heart to help and serve. And that's a beautiful possession to have. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
So Manisha, what's the one food you cannot live without?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ooh, okay, so I may get in trouble from all of my amazing aunts who make amazing food. So I love your food always, but I think the one food that I can't live without is cheesecake.
Oh, plain or toppings on top?
Plain is always good. You can never go wrong with plain, but I have to say that best toppings are strawberry and caramel, not together, separately, but strawberry and caramel. Yeah, best toppings. So,
are you a coffee
or my kryptonite?
Are you a coffee or a tea drinker?
Coffee.
Coffee. How do you take your coffee?
Honestly, I do super strong black coffee, and I top it off with just a hint of creamer, like vanilla or caramel creamer. I don't add any sugar, any of that. I usually like it pretty strong.
Do you prefer physical books or ebooks?
Oh, I love that. I prefer ebooks currently, with as busy as my life is, but I often purchase a physical copy of my ebooks to have in my library for vacations and time that I actually get to just sit in my hammock and read. So
awesome. Speaking of vacations, if you could go to one place, if you had the opportunity to travel anywhere in the world, all expense paid, where would it be?
That would be nice. Oh gosh, all expense paid? Yeah, that trip would have to be. Actually, I am checking off of one of my once in a lifetime destinations. Actually, pretty soon, I will be going to Greece in May. Yeah, so I'm actually checking it off. It's not all expense paid, so I wish that would be a part of it. But yes, I'm checking that off. I'm going to actually spend some real vacation time in Greece. And so we're going to do Athens and Santorini, and I'm super excited. Super excited.
That is so cool. We have a few people here watching. I have a Facebook comment here. This is my fiance, Keith. You met him at the conference. He was at the table with me.
Yes.
says knowledge is power, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for watching, Keith.
Thank you for watching, Keith. Yes.
That was so cool. Well, Manisha, it's been a pleasure having you here. This was my 134th episode of Speaking of Love, the podcast. And if anyone watching and listening, if you have missed any portion of this podcast, please know that it's available on all major podcast platforms. It's also available on YouTube, and it's available here on Facebook. So thank you all for being here, and I will be back here again next month. For those of you who don't know, my podcast is now a monthly podcast. I have so many things going on in my life that I had to streamline some things. So instead of doing the podcast once a week every Saturday, I now do the podcast once a month. So I will see you all back here next month. Manisha, give my audience your information as to where they can reach out to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You can reach out to me at let's see. Let me see what I can give to you guys right now. You can reach out to me on Facebook at Mo Leary is my Facebook name there, or on Instagram at Niche Life. You can also reach out to me directly if on the Frontline Strong program. You can reach out to me at mleary@med.wayne.edu is my email address there. And then again, I will plug our crisis and resource line, which is 1-833-34-STRONG. That's our first responder line. Again, that's 1-833-34-STRONG. So
wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. And I will see you all back here real soon on another episode of Speaking of Love. Have a great day, everyone.
See you later.